terror of Islam is embedded within the teaching of Islam.
The spirit of hatred and killing and slaughter is the spirit of Islam as it is written in the Qur'an.
Now I have, in one hand, I have the Qur'an, in the other hand, I have the AK-47 machine gun. I can change the world.
Islam has a plan to take over the world. They believe very strongly that they are going to create a worldwide Ummah, or nation of Islam.
Plainly, the Muslims have a missionary agenda, and governments, Muslim governments like Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, are funding the evangelization of the West through videos, through booklets, through leaflets, and through many other programs.
We're seeing Islamic societies seeking to impose a 7th century Arab worldview on everybody else.
While they all know life is better in the West, they want to destroy the West.
Muslim apologists are desperately trying to separate the terrorism or Muslims who do terrorism from Islam. But they can't do that because all of our education was geared towards violence towards non-Muslims, geared towards violence towards Jews, especially Jews. So to try to separate now terrorism from Islam is disingenuous.
No serious scholar in the world will attempt to say the hadith or the statements of Muhammad were peaceful.
Islam is not religion of peace to the infidels. Who are the infidels? Islam came exactly to correct the Christians and the Jews to say that you are false, that you are perverted, and you are not even real.
Many people say that Islam is a peaceful religion. I have worked with Muslims in the Middle East. I've worked with them in Europe. I've worked with them in Indonesia. I've worked with them in many parts of the world. And I believe that Islam is anything but a peaceful religion.
The perfect example of Islam demonstrated by Muhammad himself. He was not a man of peace. He was not a man of tolerance. He was a man who taught death and destruction.
Islam is definitely not religion of peace. The surah teaches that, and it specifically, it hides under a doctrine called at-taqiyya. At-taqiyya permit the Muslim to lie under that to the Western world.
They have a totally different value system than we have, and whenever we have an encounter, a cultural encounter with them, we from the West have difficulty trying to deal with this because we say lying is lying and this is a sin. Not for them at all.
There are only a handful of verses that you heard Muslim imams, especially right after 9/11, they would constantly repeat on cable television, where it appeared that Muslims were a peaceful, loving people being tolerant of other religions.
They say that jihad means an inner struggle. I grew up in the Middle East and I lived in the Middle East for 30 years. I've never heard the word inner struggle to explain jihad, never. Jihad is always a holy war for the sake of Allah to conquer the world Islam by any means, including lying.
The Islamists in the West are using the argument and saying jihad means struggle or struggle within. Why? Because there is one statement in Al-Bukhari, you can find a hadith or the statements of the Prophet Muhammad that says, now I resort to the jihad that is within, the self-struggle. But if you look at all the collection of the hadith before that, they were all jihad by the sword. That means I don't have any more land to conquer, now I can resort to the struggle that is within, the struggle of the soul.
Some interpret the word jihad to be an inner struggle with oneself, but that's not what I saw living among the Muslims for 15 years.
If jihad means struggle within, then how was struggle within established in Spain? When Tariq ibn Ziyad made his famous speech, the sea is behind you and the enemy is ahead of you, being Spain, taking over Spain. When they sacked Venice, when they went to North Africa, when Islam spread throughout the Middle East, when they killed 70 million in India, the huge, biggest massacre that ever happened in the history of mankind was not the 6 million Jews. It was 70 million Hindus in India. The writings of Babur Nama and what have you. Those are all historic facts. Yet no one is bringing these historic facts to the table to examine the history of Islam. Because we are not supposed to be looking at the history of Islam. We are supposed to only accept the claim of the Islamists as fact.
The life of Muhammad and reading the jihad and all the battles. I mean, there were numerous battles that this religion was birthed not through peace, through war.
Islam is perceived as peaceful by so many people when Islam spread at the point of the sword through jihad. In the space of just the first century of Islam, they spread from Saudi Arabia across the whole of North Africa, wiped out the Christian communities of all of North Africa, the lands of Oregon, Tertullian, Augustine, Clement, I mean the greatest names in early church history. Their lands were once Christian lands. The whole of North Africa used to be Christian, and yet it was once Islam by the point of the sword.
There are 32 major areas of conflict in the world today. Now those 32 major conflicts, 24 of them include Muslims. Fighting against somebody, against the Russians in Chechnya, against the small Christian community in Indonesia, against the Christians and animists in Sudan, against the Jewish people in Palestine. Anywhere in the world where you find a conflict, invariably you're going to find Muslims battling against somebody. And the reason behind that is again, Islam is not a peaceful religion. Islam is a religion that uses force. And all you have to do is read the history. It has always used force.
Terror of Islam is embedded within the teaching of Islam. It really started with even a Quranic verse where it's ordered them to strike terror in the hearts of the enemy of Allah and their enemy.
The teachings in the Qur'an and the Hadith. I mean, even in surahs, which is surah is a chapter and verse in the Quran, it says, smite at the unbeliever at their neck until you make a great slaughter of them. Now, what is that supposed to mean? It also goes on to say, take not Jews and Christians as your friend.
Considering how many Muslim flags and nations and missionary societies have crossed swords and a sword as a symbol of Islam. In fact, you just look at the Saudi Arabian's airline and you can see the sword on the back, on the tail fin there. It's the emblem of Islam, the sword. And you know that they're not talking about the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God, as we mean when we're thinking of a spiritual sword. We think of quoting Scripture. They mean a literal sword. Muhammad wielded a literal sword. He cut literal heads off. And that's how Islam advanced in the early days.
There's one system that we're fighting. We need to label it Islamo-fascist, Islamic fundamentalism, and everybody who adheres to these principles that they follow is an enemy and must be addressed and treated as such.
If a Christian goes out and does a bombing or a suicide bombing or murders people or hijacks a plane, kills innocent people, that Christian is an apostate. He is in violation of the teachings of the Bible, the commands of Christ, and the clear doctrines of the church. However, if a Muslim goes out and performs bombings or assassinations or kills innocent people in the name of Islam, he has been consistent with the teachings of Islam, the example of Muhammad, and the teachings of Muslim mosques throughout the centuries.
The moment that Western mindsets begin to say critiquing a religion should end. So when the terrorists try to blow up some cars in England and the Prime Minister in England says, we're not going to use the word Islamic fundamentalist or Islamic fascist, or we're not going to even use the word Islam, we're just going to say war on terror. That means you're not allowed to criticize Islam. You can criticize the Catholic Church. You can criticize Christianity. You cannot critique or criticize Islamic religion. Why can the West criticize everything and every single dogma in the world except Islam? Once we do that, once we do not criticize Islamic fundamentalism or the Islamic writ or the Islamic Sharia or legislation, that's when we have begun to lose our freedoms. That's when they won and it's over.
I do not think America is going to win the war against terrorism until it takes a close look at the religion that has inspired it.
In Islam, there is no radical Islam, there is Islam. Or there is liberal Muslims. There is no radical.
So while most Muslim people are peaceful, most Muslim people are not terrorists, I trust that most Muslim people are not even terror sympathizers, although we're not sure of that. Many millions of Muslims did rejoice at the news of the World Trade Center coming down, did rejoice at the news of different defeats suffered by the West, or car bombs going off in the West. So I'm not sure if not all Muslims are terror sympathizers, but let's assume that a vast amount are not.
So what I saw over the years was I saw a very violent Islam. First of all, from my own experience of violence, and then just in an everyday lifestyle, I saw violence even among themselves.
Bill Clinton even said that no religion condones violence or terrorism, but he's wrong. Just because most religions don't condone violence doesn't mean all religions will not. Islam is not a normal religion. Islam is not the same as Christianity. It's radically different. When Jesus was asked, what is the greatest command? He said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. These are the two greatest commandments. When Muhammad was asked, what's the greatest command? He said, to believe in Allah and in his apostle, Muhammad. And they said, what is the second greatest command? He said, to participate in jihad.
The spirit of Islam, or Islam, is not compatible with democracy, is not compatible with freedoms. And it's not that it is anti-American or anti-Jewish. Under the banner of Islam, the Muslims massacred Christians in Lebanon, killed Copts in Egypt, who were Arabs, by the way, killed Assyrians in Syria, who were Arabs, massacred thousands in Lebanon, who were Arabs, killed Hindus in India, who were Hindus. They were not Westerners, they were not Americans and Jews.
So jihad is a well-developed concept within Islam. It has, from the time of Muhammad, been used extensively.
The spirit of Islam wants to kill anybody that is not Muslim, wants to kill every minority. They killed people in the Middle East. Armenians in Turkey, over 2 million Armenians were massacred. All that in the name of Islam.
In the first century of Islam, they took the whole of North Africa, destroyed 3,200 churches, and annihilated a vast amount of church. In the first 3 centuries of Islam, 50% of all the Christians worldwide had been annihilated or forcibly converted to Islam, or their children had been taken and brought up as Muslims. So Islam has advanced by the point of the sword.
Lebanon used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. We are a republic, very much like the United States. It was the only Arabic democracy in the Middle East. We were open-minded, we were fair, we were multicultural, we were tolerant. We prided ourselves in our multiculturalism. We had open border policy, we welcomed everyone into our country.
Back in the 7th and 8th centuries, Islam invaded Europe, and they took Spain and they took Portugal, and they even were threatening France, and they were threatening Austria, and they took the whole of the Balkans, what became Yugoslavia, and they were pushing into the heartland of Europe. By vigorous military activities, the West managed to push Islam out and preserve Western Europe as Christendom and safe from Islam. And if they hadn't, where would the gospel have come from that came to America or to South Africa or any other part of the world? Our history would be very different.
Egypt was a Christian country. It has Jews and Christians living in it in the 7th century. And because of a weak point in this superpower's history, in the 7th century, it was overwhelmed by Arabs from Arabia, who came in, took it over, and in a few decades, they've changed the language of the superpower Egypt into Arabic, and changed the religion of Egypt into Islam through the sword.
We did not realize that once the Muslims became the majority in the society, they started asking for more Islamic rights in the government. Instead of them adopting our Western way of life in the Middle East, they wanted to change our ways, even though we were conservative Christians.
The Muslim armies wiped out first the social structure of Christianity and Judaism within what we call now Saudi Arabia, and then all over what we call now the Arab world. Their armies went out east and west.
They attacked all the way through Greece and the Byzantine Empire, up into what was the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, Vienna, in the heart of Europe, was besieged by the Muslims 3 times, and only by tremendous military vigor managed to throw the Muslims back.
You are not speaking Arabic now and you are not a Muslim because the Islamic armies had stopped in what we call now France. At that time it was called Gaul.
Of all the wars going on in the world today, about 60 wars going on worldwide, the vast majority of those wars and terrorist campaigns have Islam as the common denominator. Most of the terrorists in the world are Muslim. Almost all of the suicide bombers worldwide have been Muslim. The worst terrorist attacks have happened from Muslims. The worst human rights abuses and dictatorships and oppression of people and persecution of Christians have happened in Muslim countries.
But jihad today is, with intimidation, is taking place throughout Africa, throughout Egypt, throughout the Palestinian area by Israel, throughout Syria, throughout the whole Muslim world. And the statistic shows what's happening. Many Christians are leaving their areas immediately, afraid what's going to take place next.
From threatening China, the western frontiers of China, through to Indonesia, which is the largest Muslim nation in the world with tremendous amounts of violence against Christians often perpetrated there, with the terrorism of the Muslim terrorists in the Philippines against the Christians there, all the way through, you see Islam advancing and involved in some of the most violent acts against democratic countries.
The jihad to conquer Europe is the front line, because Europe is the first stepping stone. If they can destroy Europe first, they can concentrate on America next.
Today they are seeking to take the West by immigration, by guest workers, and by marriage. Islam is taking over France, and already there are more Muslims in France than Christians. In Britain, Islam's the fastest growing religion. You have mosques being built to the tunes of millions of dollars, Regent Park's mosque and others. So plainly the Muslims have a goal, and it is possible that there are more Muslims in Britain right now than there are practicing Christians, as in those who are in church every Sunday. That is a strong possibility. In Germany, you have millions of Muslims, Turks and other Gastarbeiters, the guest workers coming in. But now the Muslims are exulting. They are saying, we are winning in Europe today by being immigrants and guest workers, what we never won before with our armies.
In Europe, they were burning automobiles, they were burning buildings, and they're doing all this over there. And the Muslims were marching in formation. And as they were marching, they were chanting that phrase, "This is our land. This is our land. This is our land." And when the reporter asked them, "What do you mean this is your land? Is it because you are citizens of this land?" They said, "No, our ancestor never finished the conquest."
So Islam has tried to take the West before by blatant jihad.
A man who used to be the head of the CIA in the United States, Woolsey, gave a speech not too long ago, and in this speech he said that we are now in the Fourth World War. He said the First World War was in Europe, the Second World War was in Europe, the Third World War was the Cold War, the West against Russia. He says the Fourth World War is being fought today, and he says it is primarily the Western world against 3 enemies. And he defines the 3 enemies, and he said the first enemy are the fascist governments of Iraq and Syria. And of course, they're both Islamic countries. The second enemy, he said, are the Shiites of Iran. And the Shiites have a great desire to defeat the United States. They call him the Great Satan all the time, all the demonstrations. He said the third enemy is the Wahhabi Sunnis. The Sunnis are located primarily in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, in many other parts of the Middle East, probably having somewhere around 80% of all Muslims are Sunnis. The Shiites, or the Shias, their main area, Iran, parts of Lebanon, and they also have pockets in Iraq. And part of the war that we have now in Iraq deals with the fact that there are both the Shias down in the southern part of Iraq and the Sunnis that are in the northern part. And the two groups don't get along. The world war is going to continue on until one of these two groups might be a victor.
Even though they have a Sunni-Shia divide, they are uniting when it comes to a battle against Israel. And they cooperate with each other on every level, financially, politically, militarily, weapons cache, weapons aids. It's all one system.
Islamic history records that Muhammad rounded up 2,000 Jewish leaders there in Medina, had them beheaded their bodies thrown into a trench and burned. So that what we see happening in the Middle East with the hatred of the Jews, as well as the Christians, is nothing new to the modern mind of a Muslim. They believe that this is simply living out what is the perfect example of Islam demonstrated by Muhammad himself.
In 1948, the Jews were given a state, and the Arabs were given a state. But the Arabs refused to have a state. And the deep feeling in the Arab world was no country in the area should be ruled by anybody who's not a Muslim. And when the State of Israel was created for Jews to rule over themselves, that was something that Muslims could not tolerate. And that's why the State of Israel will never be accepted among Muslims.
It's the only place in the world where three continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa, all connect. It was the center of the trade routes. It's where all the trade routes in the Fertile Crescent between the great civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia and Greece, they all came through that little nation of Israel. And so even today, the superpowers are interested in that little strip of land 40 miles wide.
As a political system, Islam was used heavily in the Middle East in the late 70s by the Muslim Brotherhood. And it was very much in all the schools in the Middle East, on the mosques, everywhere.
We were told that Jerusalem was a Muslim city, stolen from us by the Jews and the Christians.
Muslims like to tell you that Muhammad flew one night to Jerusalem, and that's where he, ascended into heaven. There, it is not mentioned as Jerusalem. It simply mentions a place in the north. Jerusalem is mentioned 800 times in the Bible as the capital of the Jewish people. In the Qur'an, there is no mention anywhere in the Qur'an of Jerusalem. This is a modern-day fiction that it is an Arab capital. And so again, they are using something that does not exist in the Qur'an purely for modern political purposes that has no history in Islamic writings.
There's a law in Islam called taqiyya or kithman, and that's when a Muslim is allowed to lie in order to advance the cause of Islam. And this is why when talking heads on television, when Muslim leaders right now lying about we don't really hate the Jews, we just want our land back. What they're not telling you is the other half of the lie is that in the Qur'an is not nice to the Jews. The verses of the Qur'an are very clear in how the Muslims should declare war on the Jews and kill them until all the land is liberated from the Jews.
You hear the president of Iran say that the ultimate goal of Iran is that Israel must be wiped off the face of the earth, that all the Jews must be exterminated.
We are being infiltrated by an ideology that's extremely hateful, extremely anti-Semitic, extremely disrespectful to the rights of minorities, of women, and of Jews, especially Jews, and also anti-Christian.
When we got together as Muslims, we expressed the facts openly. The Arabs sold us out. The Arabs use us as refugees so they can make an argument for themselves that how bad Israel is. It is not a problem for us to share the truth with each other. The problem is to share the truth with Westerners or with Jews or with non-Muslims, because in the Middle East and under the Islamic system that we think, loyalty must come before truth.
In America, we are now being taught that if you're pro-Palestinian, then you must hate Jews. Then you must hate Israel.
The Bible says that in the last days, the nations of the earth will come against that little nation of Israel. God had promised that nation that that land belonged to the people of Israel. This is one of the signs that the Bible says when we see this happening, know that Christ's return is near.
The Arab children are fed the hatred towards the Jews from their mother's milk. So from the time they are infants, all they hear, all they're raised with is hatred and hatred and hatred. That starts in the home before they even go to school. That is enforced every time they watch television, every Friday, when they watch the sermons of the sheikhs and the mullahs and the imams.
The hatred that Muslims have for Jews. And it is a tragedy what is happening today in the Palestinian state. It is happening in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, and so many of the Muslim countries where even in their cartoons, children are being told to hate and to kill the Jews. Their textbooks, and this has been well documented, that even the textbooks in Saudi Arabia promote that Islam will not dominate the world until all Jews are killed and Israel is destroyed.
The hadith from Bukhari wa Muslim says the day of Islam will not come about until the Muslim fight. Who will they fight? The infidels. Even the rocks and the tree will cry out, Abdullah, servant of Allah, Muslim behind me, there's an infidel, come and behead him.
The only time there will be peace in the Middle East is when all the Arabs kill the Jews and throw them into the sea. No matter how much Israel gives, the Arabs will find the reason to wipe every last Jew from the Middle East.
The religious system itself created a generation that says you were chosen to be superior over all other nations. When the Quranic verse is being recited in class, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. You were the most favored of all nations. It doesn't simply become as a chosen people per se to send the message of Islam, but it is chosen to say that we have been chosen to become a superior nation, superior ummah or Islamic nation amongst all the tribes of the earth.
They are taught that Islam is superior to all other religions, that Muslims are superior to Christians and to Jews and to anybody else. So instead of them being taught equality, they are taught prejudice.
This is a culture of pride and shame. The Arab culture is a very proud culture.
The kind of Muslim I was a zealot. Our family believed. We loved Allah with all our heart. We lived for Islam. We lived to take Muhammad message and Allah message abroad.
The Islamic education that we get in the Middle East generates pride. This pride manifests in anger. This pride begins to teach children that all our mishaps in life, our sufferings, whether it's poverty, whether it's lack of job, joblessness, whatever, is caused by a Zionist conspiracy. So an enemy is chosen, and the enemy is slapped with everything under the sun.
In Islam, a Muslim who is raised that God has given you the right to kill the infidels because they are subhumans. It is your right to kill them and feel no remorse killing them. Actually, killing them allows you to enter heaven.
The only sure guarantee to enter paradise is if you die in a holy jihad, fighting in the cause of Islam. And so for a Muslim, they believe that if they die in a holy jihad, which many people call the sixth pillar of faith, they believe that not only do they avoid the balancing scale, but they have immediate entrance into paradise, where there are 72 black-eyed virgins waiting for them to serve their sexual desires.
Islam is promising a lot of things that these young men, that they dying in martyrdom, they don't have. Now their family's saying, good, you're gonna buy us a place in heaven. Go and do what you have to do.
The Qur'an teaches that at the first drop of blood, a martyr's blood, the angels come down from heaven and they carry a crown of pearl that is placed on the head of the martyr. And then he is carried by the arms of the angels to be seated at the right arm of God, where he is given all the glory of heaven, the virgins, the alcohol, and just the blissful life forever and ever and ever.
Islam promises that when you die, the first drop of blood that you give, you can take with you to heaven 70 of your closest family members.
The sad part about the way the upbringing of children is they indoctrinate us not into a culture of life, giving to your community. It's a culture of death. where your pride comes from dying in the jihad against infidels.
The rewards of being faithful to Allah by killing infidels, by becoming a suicide martyr. This is the way you can go to heaven, and you can receive all the glory and all the sex and all the drinking and everything that you could not have on earth. It will be given to you in heaven.
Some mothers actually stand in front of cameras after their children have died in wars, died in the jihad, died in the terror against Israel, or even in terrorism, and stand up and say, I'm celebrating my son's death.
Saddam Hussein was paying $25,000 per suicide bomber's family, to the family, per suicide bomber, who was willing to go out and kill himself, so his family will be honored.
The Muslim people they're ready to die for their belief. They're ready to give their life as a living sacrifice for the cause.
Here is a Muslim that has no guarantee of going to heaven. There is nothing in the Qur'an that says they're going to go to heaven unless they are killed in a jihad. What does that do for martyrdom? And if you think you can be killed in a jihad and your father and your mother and other brothers can come with you, then this is a very strong motivating force for jihad.
The Muslim create true terrorism in America and in Europe, in all those places, to impact government and culture, to change the way of that country from end to end.
You have the perfect motive for a person to strap on a suicide vest and go and blow innocent people up.
We terrorize the world to liberate our world. These are not new things. These are taught to us from our childhood. It's embedded in our DNA. It's in our fiber.
Well, you see, they believe that not only the person gets entrance to paradise, but the immediate family will then get immediate entrance into paradise when they die.
Terrorist is not in our dictionary. It's the liberators in our, that's what it's called, PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization. And our job was to liberate the world.
They are teaching their children that the only way to have a moral society, what is moral, what is good, is Islam. And this is what Islam teaches us. You need to kill the infidel. You need to hate the infidel. Muslims and Jews are apes and pigs because they are cursed by Allah. Therefore, you are justified in your hatred.
Every subject that we had in school had something to mention about hatred of Jews. We couldn't escape it. It was in school, in every subject. It was in the mosque sermons. It was in songs.
Madrasa it means school. It's a Muslim school specifically. We learned our purpose, what to do and how to do, and this has prepared us for next stage. The next step is what to do in Islam. Now we come to love Allah and we're ready to give our life.
I listened to poetry daily in school, telling us that jihad is the most honorable thing. Jihad to kill Jews is the most honorable thing.
It was my mother teaching says, my son, if you kill a Jew, your hand will light up before the throne of Allah, and his heavenly host will celebrate that you killed a Jew.
Therefore, you are justified in your hatred. And this is how you build a suicide bomber. You cannot build a suicide bomber all of a sudden in 1 year. You start when they are children and you raise them with this mentality. So when they become adult, they are ready to receive the rewards of heaven that you have told them about since the time they were babies.
Right from kindergarten, I remember going to school, and we all had to line up and sing, Arabs are beloved and Jews are dogs. Didn't know what a word Jew meant. Ask your father, who's the Jews? The sons of the monkeys and the pigs. From every single aspect of life, you ask questions from the teacher, from the parents, from the family. Same opinion is given, supporting each other. That the Jews are the most degraded people on earth. The Jews were prophet killers. The Jews spread mad cow disease. The Jews put infertility drugs for the Palestinians so they don't have children. The Jews run the American Congress. The Jews run the media. There is a Zionist Jewish conspiracy to take over the whole globe.
As Muslim kids, everything around us wanted to give us hatred to Jews, fear of Jews, that they are monsters, They are evil. They wanted to hurt us children. They wanted to destroy the world. They wanted to take over our homes, kill our parents, kill us children. Jews wanted to kill pregnant Arab women, drink the blood of Arab children. I was told, don't take any candy or fruit from a stranger. It could be a Jew trying to poison you.
The very first verse I've learned, and they were sure that I should learn it. I'll say it in Arabic, then I'll translate it into English. It says, أنتم كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس وأهل الكتاب هم الفاسقون. That means you are the best nation evolved to mankind, and the people of the book are the perverted integrationists.
When we listened to the radio, all the songs were about jihad, about killing the infidels, about the honor of Arabs can only come from jihad and martyrdom.
This is what Islam teaches us. You need to kill the infidel. You need to hate the infidel.
When you are taught at 7 years old to kill for the sake of Islam, it is very poetic call for a child, because now you know you are a liberator.
I was trained when I was 13, my first kill when I was 14. And you can measure onto that how this would affect a guy like me in that age.
And I was trained to kill from that age, and then as I grew older, we went on every call where Islam called us to.
By age 7, 8, a child is already saying, I hate Jews, I want to kill Jews. I'm proud to kill Jews.
Most noble thing is to kill and to be killed.
When I was 7 years old, we joined, the Muslim Brotherhood joined the PLO. The PLO is the Palestinian Liberation Organization.
When I was 13 years old, I joined the militant fragments. And I was okay with the family, because a warrior who dies on the battlefield is to reach heaven and his family is to be respected.
By the time I came to America, 18 years old, I was part of the PLO, then joined the Muslim Brotherhood, the radical Islamist movement, which became the Islamic Association of Palestine here.
I was trained to kill Jews because they were declared since Muhammad times that they are the enemy of God and the enemy of the Prophet, Muhammad.
So when you raise the children from birth, in their home, they are taught hatred and killing. They watch it on television, hatred and killing.
I was killing for two reasons. First, to pave the road for God, for Allah, kingdom, Allah's domination of Islamic. That's how I was trained, and that's how I was prepared. And second, because after all, they created in me, by that time, that early age, a fighting, killing machine, which is never stops. It keeps going on.
We in a Western society that is raised to respect others, to love others, and especially those in a Judeo-Christian society. We are raised in the Bible from the time we are children, from the time we go to Sunday school, that we should love others, that we should respect others, that you cannot kill others. You cannot even commit suicide. It is considered sin to even commit suicide. In Catholicism, if you commit suicide, you are not even entitled to a church service. You're not allowed even to be buried in a Christian cemetery. So we look at killing others or taking away a soul as a crime, as a sin. However, in Islam, killing others is not only permitted in Islam, but it is encouraged. The only way a Muslim is guaranteed an entrance into heaven is by becoming a martyr, and that is by killing others for the sake of Allah.
Christian terrorists don't blow themselves up in the Palestinian areas, and there's plenty of them. The PFLP, Popular Front to Liberate Palestine, is a Christian terrorist organization. They don't blow themselves up. Only the Muslims blow themselves up. Westerners need to ask themselves why. If both of them suffer under occupation, why are they both not equally blowing themselves up? Because this has to do with a message of salvation. It is a message of salvation. To assure yourself to go to paradise, you must die in jihad. So you expedite your death, whether it's by you lunging against the weapons, against the enemy, or whether it's by you wrapping yourself with explosives. You're trying to expedite your death so you can enter into the different adobe, of heaven and intercede for 70 members of your family.
Also available from Carol Productions, The New Barbarians, Training Children to Kill. Shocking, informative, eye-opening. It offers deeper insight into Islam's plan for world domination. To purchase this and other informative resources, visit caroltv.com.